It is pretty straightforward. I would agree with you. I actually, for textures, I would have to say that yes, it is a pretty nice little application. Okay. All right. It's kind of okay. So essentially, do you have any questions on Itsy's 3D? Because we can go through that one. Actually, let's go through the scanner application really quick. So, and the way that we're going to do this.
Is that the one that's called scanner or the one that's called structure?
There's two different ones. It depends on if you're using Sconnect, which is the application that works off the desktop. Then you would use the structure app, kind of like a wireless device, a wireless scanning device. And then the scanner app is a very simple, more of a proof of concept demo app that Occipital put together. And then I'm going to go ahead and give you a rundown of my app that we're going to try and get successfully installed probably after the podcast here. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to bring up, and let me do one more thing. I'm going to put myself in the little picture here. Okay. All right, so you should see me. Let me move this stupid little.
I see you in the corner.
Okay, now you should see me a little better.
Yeah,
okay. So essentially, what you see behind me is my iPad, which I'll show up to you right here. That has, it's an iPad Air 2. Now, if I remember correctly, you have an iPad Mini version 3. Is that correct?
I think so. I got it about 4 months ago, new.
Yeah, and as we talked about before, that was about the time that they still had the 3. I don't think the 4 had come out yet. Okay. So let's look at the Structure app first. So essentially, the Structure app has the ability to look at just the IR here, and you can turn on the IR camera. Can you see that?
Yes.
And it essentially has, if you notice, off to the right-hand side are two little LEDs. These are IR LEDs, and those IR LEDs can provide an emission of IR. And then you can kind of use it as an IR camera if you wanted to. That's one of, not necessarily one of the features, but obviously this was an SDK proof of concept app that they put out on the Apple phone. The next item below that is the depth information that is actually presented back to the camera. And if you notice in the middle of it, it identifies with the reticle the distance. So if you played with this already, that should be pretty obvious. And they've used false coloring to identify the depth information. And then bottom one is depth and color. And if it is properly registered, which I'm pretty sure this one is, it has the capability of showing the actual, what do you want to call it, RGB information from the Apple camera below the depth information, as you can see there.
Yeah.
So you've already familiarized yourself with this. Is this correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then you have the gear. The gear is important because it tells you what firmware version you have. It tells you your serial number, and then it tells you your battery strength. In this case, and plus it also tells me that my firmware is up to date. Here, my battery level is at 38%, which I guess is okay. We should be able to get through this. One of the things I'm going to be adding to my app is a little battery indicator, because for whatever reason, I always seem to fall into this occurring during the time frame that I need to get a scan done, and then I have to go charge it. I have found if you can actually run it with the adapter plugged in, but it seems to either overheat or not compensate for the charging as well as running it from the AC, and then will shut down. But in a pinch, I guess you could possibly do that. What I'd like to do is create like a dual battery system to provide power to your iPad and the sensor at the same time.
Yeah.
But that's further down the line. Okay, so that very basic app there. I'll go ahead and get out of it. Let me scroll and get rid of all these. So some of the other apps, let's see if we have it here, is the scanner app, which we just talked about, which I may
What
or may
about the
not have.
Calibrator? The Calibrator app, how often do you have to use that?
Normally, only once. The only time that you may have to use it more than once if you switch out, like if you notice my system here, and I'll switch back to my other camera. I actually have developed a magnetic system that three easily attached with some 3N tape that doesn't harm the surface of your iPad, plus my mount here, which we're going to talk about because this is essentially the type of case that you're going to get. And it allows you to mount it very easily uh, with almost the same specification as the bracket. And to show you the bracket, this is for the iPad 2
Uh-huh.
or the original Air, not the Air. And let
That's
me
what
do
I have.
this. And yeah, well, you have the Mini, right?
Yeah.
You have the smaller, and I'll show
Yeah.
you that because I also have that as well, and I'll show you how that looks. Okay, so I'll put this back on. So by doing it this way, I'm able to use my sensor, as you'll find out. So you might want to do the same thing on multiple devices. Even though I own more than one sensor now, I still have multiple devices I test with. So it's nice to be able to exchange them. So the answer to your question is, let me turn off. I'm playing with the screen while I'm doing this, not intentionally. Okay, there we go. And so what happens is, as I take the same device and I'm using on multiple devices, I sometimes have to recalibrate. Now, something that we'll have to talk about when you get your iPhone 6 is the expert calibrator, which I can show you very quickly, which is something that has to be obtained directly from Occipital. So I will have to request permission, but you're probably familiar with this app already. This is the Calibrator app. And
Yeah.
have you already used this?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
familiar with it.
Did you find it very straightforward?
Yes, pretty good.
Okay. So,
You can't use it outside though. It's too bright, huh?
right. And so, a little bit of theory behind it. Essentially, it's an infrared projected laser that is then received by a camera. That's why you have both a projector and the camera. And since it's in the infrared, and there's obviously a lot of infrared in standard daylight, it mars the
Ah,
capability, it overwhelms it.
yeah.
So I found that uh, indoors is probably preferable. I found that in the shade sometimes helps, but ideally in the uh, internal structure with some very diffuse lighting, not overwhelming, not a lot of light. And the way that I compensate for that, and I'm going to show it to you in a moment, is my product called NEODiBRIGHT. So with that, and actually I have it on the bottom here. So with that being said, um, normally if you're using the same bracket, the one that you have, you only have to calibrate once. Now you actually have more than one device, or excuse me, iDevice. You have the iPad, and you also have let's see if I remember correctly, the iPhone 6, which is what this is here. And if you're going to use the same sensor with it, it does have the ability to record it. The sad thing is the iPhone series of devices does not have a calibrator yet. Now, I've been told that that's going to be coming very soon. We will have to actually do something different, and I will have to guide you through it. I won't spend time in this podcast doing that, but we'll do that in the future day.
Okay.
But that requires you to use a checkerboard and an infrared light source like an incandescent light bulb in order to illuminate this pattern. I personally feel that it's more straightforward from my um, particular well, actually, I'll show it to you instead of trying to verbalize it. Let's see. So essentially what you have is a dual panel. Let me bring it up again. And the left side shows you the color image, the right side shows you the infrared. And what you do is that you hit the calibrate button, and you can also do the auto capture, and it captures a series of data points as you move around. You see how I'm moving around?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do it now because it's already calibrated, but essentially as you move around this checkerboard pattern, that's the other thing, I don't have it with me, it knows the size of that checkerboard, the squares on it, and it knows its pattern. So from there, it can determine the angle and calculations in order to provide both the intrinsics and extrinsic values. The intrinsics is the comparison of the infrared information, both the RGB and the infrared, and the extrinsic is the calibration between, I have my finger here, the RGB camera and the infrared. And that's normally what you're calibrating with the Calibrator application. So what you're wanting to do is make sure that your alignment of your color information is exactly the same as what's on your infrared. The problem with that is each of the iOS devices use different lens systems. So your focal points and the depth of field are all different. And that all has to be compensated for. That's why you can't use it just once.
Right.
However, the sensor has the ability to record more than one set of calibration. So for instance, I can calibrate my device here for more than one iOS device. And that's very important, as later on there'll be other accessories that you can attach that will require that extra information stored away. Okay, so this is the Expert Calibrator, and it is not available. And it is something that I've seen in other applications as well. That checkerboard is very familiar. I think this goes back to the PrimeSense days that they utilized that. I appreciate Occipital putting the time and effort to try and make this as easy and simple as possible. That's why I asked if this was an easy process for you. They have found that the Expert Calibrator is a little more overcomplicated for some people. One, they have to print out this pattern. But I guess with my engineering background, I actually felt it was more intuitive from my perspective because it was very concrete in the measurement process.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but we'll have to go through that with your iPhone device. Okay. So, have you already worked with the Itsy's application, or do you have questions with it? Because what I'm going to do is go ahead and run through it very quickly.
I just have really one question.
Okay.
When you have a new scan, let me see. It says, let me see. Gosh, it says.
Okay. Do you want me to click on New Scan on mine since it's behind me? So go ahead and look at my screen. This is the two items that you have, object and human.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So we're going to do human, and we're going to pretend that this next camera that I'm going to show you. So then you have the option of bus scanning, or you can turn it sideways into a full person scan.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Okay. Now the problem with this is geared for humans. So I don't know how well this would work for you when you want to scan some of the items, the models in Italy, and that could be a problem. But I think we'll have that solved with my app once we get it on your machine. You'll get a lot of the same quality, but I find that the textures in the Itsy's app are superb. The meshes, not so much, but the textures are pretty good. In fact, this little guy here, actually, I'll just put it in front of the camera here. This is, that's kind of funny. It's wanting to scan him, scan an object. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and switch. Actually, you can see the camera. So I'm going to move over here. Hopefully I don't disconnect anything. Okay. So I call this, let's do the little baby, see what it does.
But there's on one, I can't see it now, but it says, maybe it's on the reconstruction, about high resolution or little two little text box in the top. And I can't remember.
Actually, let's cancel. Let's see, can we do that here? Yeah, go down to your settings, and then you can see that you can do highest quality, or you can do a lower quality. If you do highest quality, it then uploads a 5 to 8 megapixel camera or image. Now, what's interesting is I'm wondering,
Oh,
I don't think they don't use it for they can't do the iPhone 6s Plus yet, but that actually has, I think, what is it now, a 16 or 12? Is it 12 or 16? I can't even remember. I think it's a 12, no, 16, twice that. I don't remember. However, the information that you can now capture with the 6S and the 6 Plus or 6S Plus, I think is twice that of the previous camera. So you could even get obviously better quality textures. All right, so let me get out of this, hit new scan, and then I'm going to scan human. Let's see if it recognizes it. That's interesting. Can you see that? It's not wanting to recognize either of these.
I've had that happen too. Sometimes a little sign will come up in the bottom and say, "You're too close," or "You're too far away."
There we go. Okay, so well, we had it there for a moment. Okay, and then you hit start. And then you rotate around, but we're going to only do 180, which it should do. So you probably already figured out that you have to move your device around. And something that I like to tell people when they're using it is rotate the camera itself, not your body, if that makes any sense. Some people have a tendency to move the actual iPad, but not keeping the positioning of the camera pointing at the object, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So we're going to finish that up.
Does it light sensitive? Does the object have to have the same kind of amount of light around it?
Correct, and that's one of the reasons I created NEODiBRIGHT, which I'll switch back to this camera here. That's this thing here, and essentially it hooks up to a, let's see if I have it, to any USB 5-volt source, and I found these on Amazon for about $9. It's Anchor, which has been a good brand. I've had it for about 2 years. Little power switch, and then it provides some pretty decent illumination. I put a diffused white panel on the front so that it softens it up. I've had my wife complain that it really was too bright previously, but it's more of a fill light. If you can look at it, see how it's working.
Yeah.
So from this distance, it does a great job and helps fill it in. However, it is not an overbearing light. So if you're doing this in daylight, it may not be enough to overwhelm the lighting. And what I found to be a problem with the scanning process is, let's say you're doing this indoors and it's like in front of a window. I found that as you rotate around to the back of an object, which is in the shade, the lighting from the window overwhelms it, which then overcompensates. And I'm pretty sure they turn off. In fact, I do it in my app. It's manual, but it essentially overwhelms it, and all the textures in the back of them are seen to be darker than they should be. And so my light has a tendency to help in that illumination. But what I have found to work good is find a room with some overhead lighting, probably in the 6,000, 6,500 Kelvin, about 5,500 to 6,500 Kelvin, and use my light in conjunction with that. But try not to have any light sources that are at eye level or at your scan level. That seems to overwhelm the camera, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, great. Okay, that's a good tip.
And it's really helped me. If we go back, here's some examples of some that I just did. Now this was done indoors. Now notice the back there. So again, because I have a large picture window, it overwhelmed the lighting here in the back. Front turned out perfectly. Let's see, I think this one here has
Yes.
better lighting because again, I use overhead lighting and then my NEODiBRIGHT.
I can't see what you're showing me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for bringing that up. How about
Okay.
now?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. So notice as I rotate her, the back of her hair has almost equal lighting as the front of it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's because I use my little NEODiBRIGHT lighting system. Now, obviously, if you have other light sources you can attach to it, I found one of the things in working with this in the last 2 years is that, you can see me down there in the bottom corner, is that I've got a little plate so it attaches like that to the bottom and stays with the iPad. Some of my other solutions were like lights mounted off to the side, but it became too cumbersome and the lights actually weighed more than the device itself. You'll find out when I use this with the iPad, or excuse me, the iPhone, that this becomes even more important because it provides auxiliary lighting to a smaller device where the lights, the attachment lights were a little bit overwhelming. So that's how I did this particular item here. And you know, as you can see, this one was done indoors without any lighting. And notice one of the things that I noticed with the iOS cameras, they're not really good with, I would even say, low light in average lighting. I think that was done with the iPad Air 2, and a lot of people complain that it's a very noisy, has a lot of chroma noise, as you can see in that image there.
Yeah. So this is there any reason to use the scanner app then?
Um, let's see, how can I say this diplomatically?
Well, you don't have to be. I couldn't see
No,
any reason to use it because
no,
although
well, I actually do not use it, and we're going to actually talk about why I don't use it. I have developed my own app, and basically it works off the SDK, but I've added a lot of features that make up for some of the deficiencies. One of them was the better color textures. And that's only because they didn't improve the scanner app. It's not like the hardware. The technology has been there. I have just utilized it in my app. In fact, if you go into, and I don't think I don't even have it installed on this this iPad, so it tells you how often I use it. But the scanner app itself has some settings if you go into system that allow you to do higher color now, especially if you downloaded the latest. You may not have had those switched on, but I've made those available directly in the app itself. You don't have to go to the system tray.
your app.
I'm sorry,
Are you talking about your app?
in my app, which I'll go ahead and bring up now so that you'll see it for yourself.
What's yours called?
BioStep Capture. So this is the app here. And essentially, one of the things that I felt, because I like this Connect, which is a desktop app, I didn't really like the IMU being used to level the cube. I wanted the cube to project directly so I know exactly what I'll be scanning. And so if you notice, the cube here is kind of like projecting, you know, like what would you call it? A laser device. Can you see that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And I also wanted a reticle. The scanner app does not have one. I don't believe Itsy does this either, does not as well. And it allows me to direct exactly where I want to see my measurement. Notice I'm 104 centimeters from this doll's face. Can you see that?
Yes.
And then if I go to the skull, I'm 105. That becomes extremely important in my scan process because I need to make sure when I'm scanning, I am always the same distance. This is very important for capturing textures because when you start using my lens system, that actually has a sweet spot. And if you deviate from that, some of the RGB values may be a little bit blurry. So some of the things that you're not seeing right now is that I've switched off all the settings. So essentially what you have, which I designed this because these are the things that I found that I needed in my scanning over the years, the last 2 years. And one of them was, you probably figured out with the scanner app that you can pinch to zoom,
Yeah.
make the cube. Well, I found that you had to take your hand off the right-hand side of your device. So if you notice the way let me get back into my camera here. If you notice the way this is set up, your controls are where your thumbs are at. Can you see me down on the bottom left-hand side?
Yeah.
So you never have to remove your hands from the sides of the device. And then, so that means the cube has a little vertical slider over here on the left. Do you see that and see how I'm manipulating it?
Yeah.
Okay. So that way you can expand and contract. And then this right over here, this little target underneath the scan button is I call it now I can't even remember the name of it, and I made it. But essentially it locks in the RGB focus. So watch what happens. See how the camera kind of juddered a little bit as it's determining the focus point, and then locks it and makes it manual. So to get a better idea of what you can do with this, I'm going to turn on all the settings. So you can use the new features, which is I can scan and use for my textures 300,000 plus faces. So if I'm using a very detailed mesh, I can now use that in order to create a detailed texture. I can also, if you go down to the bottom left-hand side, I can also change my voxel size.
Oh, okay.
And so if you're familiar with that term,
Sure.
currently, and this is why you probably felt the scanner app, and I'm also going to put Itsy's in the same category, in order to provide real-time or very fast updating, they chose the 4 millimeter voxel. However, if you've got an iPad Air 2 or an iPhone 6 or the brand new S's, you can probably get by with going all the way down to 2. And I found with my new my 6SP, I can actually go down to 1.5 millimeter voxels. So you can actually go all the way down to 1. Now, here's the caveat, and I'll actually give a demonstration in a moment. If you go all the way down to 1, the smallest voxel size, the processor inside cannot keep up with the computations in real time. So if you've got a static object, which you're going to have, you can essentially scan as long as you want. And as you'll see, smaller voxel size gives you more noise. But if you repeat the scanning process by slowly moving it within the cycle time, it will average it. So you'll get the detail and you'll remove the noise, but it takes a lot longer. So I found that at least if you've got an iPad Air 2 or the iPhone 6P or 6S, 6SP, or even the new iPhone, or excuse me, the iPad Mini 4, which sadly you had bought yours, but even the iPad Mini 3 does a fairly decent job at about 2.2 2.2 millimeter voxels. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stay at the 4 and then give a comparison. I'll say at 3.9. So I'm going to get up, and if you watch the screen, notice I'm pretty much locked in immediately, and now I can use the left vertical slider to track it. So I'm going to go ahead and keep all my values at the lower quality. Now notice in the bottom right-hand side, we have a focus control. We can go auto, which will automatically focus depending on where we're at. And as soon as you hit scan, it will lock in based upon that automatic focus point and to a manual setting. And then from that point, it will always be in manual. Now, not only does my app do this, but Itsy's does this as well as the scanner app. And I think that's very important because you don't want your focus adjusting, because it also modifies the lens, the focal length, which can modify the distortion in the texture alignment. So you want to make sure you're locked into it and use the same things. So this is why it's been important to me to have the distance identified so that I'm always scanning at the same distance. So normally you want to be able, like a lot of things, try and capture as much as possible within the confines of the minimum setting, which is about 40 centimeters. So for instance, without my lens, you can go to about 40. Let me take this off. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm going to reduce the size of my cube because it plays a part in this, how much mesh information is defined. Because obviously it's what it's doing when you have it increased is spreading that mesh information over a larger area. Okay, so let me back up. Let's go a little bit more. Okay, so the cube is surrounding the doll. So now I'm going to hit the autofocus lock, and then I'm going to scan. Now, that little message that comes up there is important because it's what it's asking you to do is stop scanning for a moment so it can capture another texture. Now notice my numbers jump around, and notice I've kind of deviated from 40. So let me get back into 40. So it's kind of a little game, and I'm not very good at it. Okay. So can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So essentially, if you look at there's not a lot of detail. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, not in that mode, but you see the voxels.
Well, the mesh information would identify that. Here's the actual texture. But if you remember, I turned off detailed texture. So this is probably what you've been experiencing with the scanner app.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back and we're going to make some modifications. We're going to drop this down to 2 millimeters. We're going to turn on HQ color. We're going to go 300,000 faces, and we're going to do the same thing. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
So notice immediately there was more noise, but notice how it's smoothing out. So notice it's taking longer.
Good.
But notice my detail. So notice the detail now.
Yeah, good.
Okay, so now we'll add textures.
So how do we get your app?
Well, we'll talk about that. You actually, I sent you a new link, so we'll go through the steps on how to actually install that when we get done with this.
Yeah.
So hopefully within the next week. So here you go.
Yeah. I leave a week from today.
I'm sorry.
I leave a week from today to go to Italy.
Okay. So there you go. And if you want to see the wireframe, you can see the actual
No, that's
mesh
good.
detail. And like I said, you could actually go down even further. We'll actually go down to 1.
So so now it's an OBJ file.
It will be an OBJ file, correct.
And how is it exported? Just by email?
Right now it's email, but there will be other options available. So see how long it took to actually scan at 1? So you can do it, but you'll have to have patience.
Yeah. Great. I got the idea, right? Good.
Okay, and then let me show you the wireframe. Okay, so literally almost half the size. So as the newer devices improve, we'll have the ability to do more.
Great. Yeah, very nice.
Okay, so that's pretty much it. There's a help screen. You hit the question mark. Pretty much tells you all the information on all the different settings, what they're for. So if you forgot what something is, and then you can cause it to remove.
Great.
You can remove all the other settings so that you have a clean interface to work with. This is, as I mentioned, for the iPad. It is also available for the iPhone.
I'm going to stick to the iPad for a while, just because I'm probably practicing.
Okay, but let me go ahead and let me show you this on this. Okay, so let me. Okay, so this one has not been calibrated, which is the reason why it's not showing up properly. If you don't have the iPhone calibrated properly, this is what you get. So even though we can still scan, as you can see, we're getting mesh information. We won't get color unless you calibrate it.
Yeah, good. Okay.
But the reason that I'm showing you this is that basically you have the same kind of settings that you can remove, control, and there will also be a help, which I'll have to do a little differently because of the screen side. But pretty much everything's on the right-hand side for one-handed operation. The Bluetooth control works and allows me to enable and disable scan functionality with it. Okay, so that's that device. So any questions?
No, I have a question for viewing it. Like I emailed as a test one of my scans to a friend, and he could get the non-color 3D model, but he couldn't see a color. So how do you open an emailed scan?
Okay, essentially there will be attachment to the email that's an OBJ file that includes, I think, a zip file that includes the OBJ and a material file, and then also the texture.
Oh, okay. So it's automatic. It goes with the email.
Right. It's a zip file.
Okay.
So there's a zip file, and then there's a small texture file that goes with it.
Okay.
So what I would recommend, you can use Mesh Mixer, you can use Mesh Lab. There's several other viewers out there. You can load it up to, what was the application? Sketchfab, so if you want others to see it.
I mean, what do you mean? If I want to send somebody an email of the app, do they have to download Mesh Picture or Mesh Lab in order to see it?
They will need some type of viewer. So if you want to send somebody the mesh file, they will need some type of viewer to see it.
Oh, no, not the Mesh file, the colored file.
Yeah, the OBJ file, they would need some type of viewer, correct.
Oh, okay, so they have to, on their iPad or whatever, they have to download either
Right. Or,
Lab.
or use Sketchfab, which I'll bring up and show you in a moment. Um, is what I use, and this way the person on the other end does not have to have an application.
Sketch Lab?
Sketchfab.
How do you spell it? Pad or lab?
Sketch, as in
Sketch?
sketching, fab, F-A-B. If you look at the screen, it shows you what it is right there. Right above me, right here.
I don't see. I see high slow 3D creators.
Oh, that's okay. It says Sketchfab underneath. Well, I don't know if you're seeing.
Oh, I see. Sketchfab.com. Yeah.
Okay.
So what is? How do you use that?
Okay, well, essentially, and I'll go through it real quick. Notice up in the right-hand corner is an upload button. So you set yourself up an account. You can either use the basic free account, which I think there's some limitations on the number of scans, and then, or you can get a pro account, which I don't remember how much it cost. It's not that expensive, but you click the upload, and then you choose your file. So you can immediately take the zip file that you scan and load it up there. In fact, I'll have to look at it. I might actually provide that feature. I know that Itsy provides it. I know a previous version of Structure, so I'll have to look and see if the SDK still has something there that I can work with. But essentially, if I build it in, you just use this. You add your ID number, and there's one that that they provide instructions on how to do it.
Very good.
But essentially, you can either drag and drop or choose the file, and then it uploads it, and essentially all the same files that I was using in Itsy or other application, I'm able to upload.
Great.
And you can do this with pretty much any 3D file. It can take a little bit of time depending on how much details in the mesh, but then you're able to view it.
So do you do the 3D printing as well?
I can, yes. I don't. I used to do it as a service, but I live in a college town, and I found that students would wait till their last week and normally want their student discounts. It wasn't very profitable. So I kind of got out of that and back into things that I enjoy more, which is engineering and design. So.
Well, I'd like to try the apps. Do I buy it or is it downloaded from the App Store?
Which one is that?
The one you just showed me. That you're
BioStep Capture?
BioStep.
Well, yeah, actually, I'm letting you use a beta version of it. So let me finish up. You can either stay with me. I wanted to show a few other things, and then I can call you back, and then we can actually go through that to try and get it installed on your machine.
I'm supposed to go to the movies, a date with my wife, so I don't want to.
Well, that's important.
I'd rather stay here, but I better not. You know.
Okay. Well, then
I'm available all day on Friday. I can easily call you anytime.
Okay. Well, let's plan on if you've got time tomorrow.
Anytime.
We can do it tomorrow. Okay. All right. Well, let's do it tomorrow then. I've got another project that I'm working on that I think is pretty cool, which I'm going to show a little bit after the end of this this podcast / YouTube Google Hangouts on air.
Okay.
So just to make you aware of it, this presentation will also be uploaded to YouTube. So which is one of the reasons I wanted to formalize it and have multiple.
Yeah, sorry about the initial complications. I think it's just
not at all. It worked out fine, Paul. I think it was only 10 minutes and I was still setting up anyway. So behind me is my wife, Siobhan. And again, here's a high detailed scan that I had done.
That's a good one. It shows a deep hair detail really nicely too. Eyelash.
I'm sorry?
Shows things like eyelash and hair really nicely. I'm going to try scanning a cadaver tomorrow. I might be able to have a fresh one, so I want to see what kind of results I can get.
Okay. So I don't remember what you purchased, so I should go back and actually go through and show you what the difference is in the same scan process with my lens system.
I better get going soon, Michael.
Okay, that's fine. It'll take 5
Give
minutes.
me a note about what time tomorrow, and I'll get on. Anytime.
Okay. Well, yeah. If you got 5 minutes, let me show you this real quick. Okay. Okay, the first thing you may notice is that now you can go to 30 centimeters with my lens system.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
However, it has a sweet spot. Notice if I go out to 40, I completely lose. So I actually have a little sleep. I can go to about 25 centimeters to about 35. But the important thing is that I'm able to get in closer. So let's say I can move my box in closer. Okay. So I'll go ahead and start scanning. But I don't think this was at completely.
So does this give you a better image, higher resolution image? This
It
allows you to
gives you,
come in closer.
yes, it allows you to scan closer, which gives you more detail. What I have found that I'm able to actually scan if I give myself some time and actually see the pupil in an eye. So you get, in my opinion, results fairly similar to a higher end scanner like the Artec. If you take your time and use the lens properly. The other thing is because you're in closer, you'll get better detail in your textures as well, as you'll see in a moment.
Oh, good. Yeah.
But the caveat is because it is more of a macro or a close-up, see? Because it's like a macro lens, you essentially have to get fairly close to the subject or object. So it's
Yeah.
good for faces. It's good for hands. It's not good for bodies, obviously. I have done it with the body, but it takes a lot of work because literally you're scanning at that distance, 30 centimeters, all the way down a body, which is somewhat impractical. So what I like to use it for is detail objects like faces, and then use it without the lens, maybe even use Itsy's for a full body at a lower polygon so that I get all the detail in the face and then lower polygon. And in some cases, I use other applications for bodies and just plug person head on it. So that's the reason that I did it. So that's with the lens system. And the reason I brought that because I think, if I remember correctly, your order has, and I think I have it set aside for you, has a lens as well.
No, I think so. Well, let's see. That was my intention.
Yeah. So I thought I'd give you a demo. It's very easy to use with the application. Tomorrow we'll go ahead and get it installed on your machine. It should be fairly straightforward. I've had some issues with the certificates not attaching, and I think I know why now. I've been putting them in the same folder, and I forgot that Apple doesn't allow you to copy it. It just assigns it another number, or maybe, so I forgot that. So you should be able to use it now. Like I said, I was hoping that Fred, it goes by Great Fredini, who's does a lot of scanning at Coney Island, literally does full body scans and create a bunch of 3D characters to do in a 1918 version of Coney Island. Well, you did mention you've got to go. So
Thank
on
you.
that note, I'm going to continue with my podcast because I'm going to show off the new NEODiMOUNT version 2 case, which you will not be getting because it's not available yet. And I want to make sure you get all your stuff before you leave. So the idea is to get this in the mail to you tomorrow.
Thank you very much. It's been very, very helpful. And of course, I hope I can pay you for your time. This is great.
No, don't worry about that. Like I said, it's nice to have somebody ask questions while you're doing presentations. So the benefit you being there and asking the questions was very helpful to me.
Good.
So I appreciate you doing it this way with me.
Oh, no,
We
fine.
could,
It worked out all right. I'll use Chrome from now on. For sure.
well, you don't necessarily have to. I could have redid my system for Skype, but I find that it would
Oh, this is
probably,
great. This is fine.
yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you
Well,
very
thank you very much, and we hope we get everything up there, and you can show us some great scans on Sketchfab when you get back from Italy.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much.
All right, bye.
Okay, just close Chrome now, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead, and there you go. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and stay on because I'm going to show off some stuff and show you how to actually. There we go. Show you actually how to install. Let me find my device here. Well, first of all, let me talk about the new product. So if you remember, I've had a product called NEODiMOUNT for some time, which included 3 magnets. And this is probably a good example. This is what I have. And essentially these are, I don't know, 16th inch magnets attached to the surface through a 3M uh, double-sided sticky tape. And I've had this one on here for, gosh, I don't know, 3 months now, but I've had the iPad Air 2 for even several months before that. And I found that it's been very effective, very durable. And as you can see, let me go ahead and find the device. It's worked quite well, and it attaches like that, as you can see. So if you wanted something that keeps the slim line, let's say you wanted the back, I find it very elegant. I'm looking for kind of a black anodized version of these. So if you've got like the space gray, but these look really nice on the aluminum back, as you can see here. They don't seem to really affect anything. As mentioned before, you can actually attach this to your refrigerator. So if you wanted to use it on your refrigerator, you can. This is the new iPad Mini 4 with the new cover, actually from Apple, even though they are pricey and you can buy something on Amazon. Sadly, I'd have to say spending the extra money on an Apple product was worth it. They have a far superior magnet on theirs, just like I'm using, and attaches very firmly to it. So yes, I was very pleased with it. It's very secure. And if you notice, the iPad Mini 4 is very, very slim. It's about the size of a Reader's Digest. And with the sensors attached to it like that, very quickly, you're back up and running. This is for the iPad Mini 2. So I'm sorry, the iPad Air 2. And I do make a straight version of this. Notice it's off because the camera on the Air 2 was positioned differently. So you can do that. So as you can see, pretty cool. But I also have, I think I can show it, let's see, well, I'll show it in a moment. But if you don't want to do anything like that and you want to continue to use the bracket, but you've got more than one device, I've been working with somebody on creating a new case system, and I'm ready to reveal it. So essentially this one you have to attach, and this is just the bare plastic, to the bottom of your structure sensor. Let me find the, I can't see, there we go. So it essentially, and then I've been playing, this is my experimenter version, but it attaches the bottom and you just essentially use your 4 screws here. Well, the problem is this increases the depth or the distance of the sensor. So I've had to actually move all of my cases and that over a little bit so that the the edge here does not obscure the RGB lens. Um, but I finally found a solution that I think is very effective. It's going to take a little more work on the individual, but I think it'll be well worth it. So let me show you. Let's see, we'll go ahead and use this one. So this is, ta-da, the iPhone NEODiMOUNT Plus case. And this is for the S Plus, so that it fits it fairly snugly. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the iPhone S Plus is thicker and actually fit probably too well in the previous case. So I've expanded a little bit. I put a new ridge in so that it holds it in place more securely. Um, but if you notice, there's a big difference. There is a blue strip, as that's why I call it blue steel, but this is what they call band steel, which has a high ferrous content. I think there's a high quality or high amount of iron, because I noticed that uncoated that it oxidizes. And I can, let's see, show you one where it has, no, actually these are all been good, but it has oxidized, so there will be a clear coating over these when they ship. But what makes this unique is that on the back of this, you have a new bottom. And essentially, you remove the current sensor bottom and you place this bottom on it. And notice that there are 3 lower intensity magnets. Again, the Neo in the design. These are rare earth magnets that displaces the magnetic field across the entire body. And because it's a full steel plate, you essentially slide it into place and then it locks it firmly and provides the proper tension for all of it. And I always seem to dirty up the lens cover on this when I'm doing this. So it's locked into place. Now the cool thing behind it is because it now matches, because it is actually replacing the bottom and the magnets are now embedded in it. The alignment is based upon the reference designs I actually built these based upon those that Occipital provided. So it matches equally. And this is, like I said, the 6 Plus, but there will be a company who will be distributing the NEODiMOUNT version of this for the 6, because they're actually going to be using this design. So here's the same thing. So I've switched essentially from a 6 to 6 Plus. This is the same thing with the iSense. This is the black version, so I'm making this in black, red, and white. But essentially, you pop it on like that. And this is a previous iteration of it. The other thing that's very nice about this is that I have 4 screw holes, and that allows me to attach the device. So let's say you don't want to use the magnetic base, but you still like the case design because of uh, the I've already forgotten, the bayonet connector here, or the mounting system on the bottom. You can attach it with the same screws, and that will provide a very secure gripped connection with the case. And all the cases provide it, so they have the 4 holes. So you can use that to mount it securely. So if you're using it in an environment that you're going to be shaking a lot, then I would recommend that. But the cool thing from my perspective is that now, because this is flush, I can use the brackets that are available for the iPads minis and the Airs. Sadly, there isn't one for the iPad Mini 4 yet because it's a longer design, so this bracket does not work with it. But and actually, you can see the oxidation in this test or previous version. Again, I will have that taken care of in the final version. There'll be a clear coat put on top of this in order to prevent that from occurring. But on the back, I use a highly sticky 3M thick, I think it's like a 4 mil tape that seals it into the case system itself, or at the bracket, as you can see there. Um, does not in any way prevent it from connecting to it. Let me use this one because I think it'll still fit on the iPad. So there you go. There's the iPad Air 2 which is a little thinner than the previous version, but you can see that it fits. And then you just slide this into its place. Voila, locks it into place. And you can continue to use it. So if you're switching from your iPhone to your iPad, this is a perfect solution, and you can go from one device to another. It's also very low cost. This bracket itself probably will be about $20, including the magnet. If you just want to convert your own bracket, probably $25 for the whole kit. You do need, and I'm looking to see about sourcing it, but you will need a T4 screwdriver in order to remove the 4 screws on the bottom. Also, make sure that you follow uh, sensitive equipment specifications. So I will put some instructions in there. But basically, take your screws off, remove the other bottom, and put this one on it. There is one caveat that I found. In order to keep the sides secure, and in designing it, I also saw that there are 2 tabs. Let me see if I can get a little closer so you can see that. See the 2 tabs in there. So those tabs um, are fit into a couple of locking. So what I have suggested, either taking a very thin, I use something to remove my the prints from the bed, but essentially a very thin, like a razor or something that you fit into the groove right here, and then essentially push it in the middle here, which unlocks it. It's very easy to do. I'll do a more detailed instructions, static instructions. I've had somebody already test it out. Um, yeah, it could be a possibility of breaking it. The new version does include the tabs as well, so it locks it in place, as you can see here. And then it will provide the 3 stainless steel magnets on the bottom. And again, the positive, having the magnets here and not on your device, if you're concerned about the sensitivity of magnets actually being on your case, let's say you're still using the compass or have some other needs that even though I've been able to recalibrate, some people find that a little disconcerting. They may feel that it might ruin it. For those people, you can either use this device with no magnets, use it with the magnets on the sensor, or use it without magnets and just bolt it on so that there are no magnets involved at all. And again, you can use this on other devices. I plan to actually have a bracket. So if you have a case already that you uh, want to stay with, you can attach this bracket to the case, providing a low profile connection. It won't be as low profile as my case or the bracket because it won't be able to be inserted into the plastic of the case, but it still will be fairly profile. But you could also use this on another ferrous like a refrigerator. So you could turn it into a scanning system on your refrigerator, uh, you know, take pictures, scan 3D, I don't know. Um, use your imagination. Or you can use this bracket system to mount this to a tripod. So, you know, Fred, who just purchased a unit, I think this is the direction he wants to go. So he'll be able to go directly from his device to that. I don't know if I have it here. You know, I have, but I do have the whole thing. Let's see where it's at. Here it is. But you could just take the steel plate and just line it up like that. So I mentioned I was going to show off the new NEODiMOUNT, or NEODiMOUNT, the NEODiVR Junior, which is this thing here. It's being keyed out. I have the yellow one, which is right here. So essentially it takes an iPod 6G, which I think is a very underrated device. Essentially is the same as an iPhone 6 for $200 if you get the 16 gig version. Um, I found that it scans really well, about 2 millimeter voxels. So 200 also makes a great remote head. The only caveat, it has a smaller screen, but if you're on a budget or an Android person and don't want to spend the money for an iOS, that might be the direction to go. Also, because it's very compact, makes it very good to to hold and manipulate, especially with the Bluetooth grip. But yeah, very cool. I do have a case system for this one as well that uses the new version 2. I don't have it down here. The other thing is, with the version 2, if you buy the NEODiBRIGHT with it, it will include 2 magnets on the back so that you can attach it directly into the channel. So if you're not using it for scanning, it'll attach like that, or it'll attach directly to these mounts that I have that I've shown that will have uh, little metal plates in them, so it provides the, so again, all the magnetic properties will be on the devices and not on your iPhone. Okay, well, that's about it. I guess I can show one more item, and that is what I'm spending a lot of time very excited about, and that's this little unit here. This is the NEODiVR loop made specifically for the iPhone 6S Plus or 6 Plus. So it fits like that. It has, these are just rubber bands, but we'll have some silicone band systems that allow you to wrap it around the phone. There's 2 of them to hold it in place. The version being printed right now will have these 2 eye cups will pull up. There's a little attachment down on the bottom that allow it to be secured. You just squeeze on it a little bit and let it flip up, and then you'll have access to the screen to be able to, control what you're actually viewing, which I think is something that I guess others should have done but haven't. And I'm also working on, currently I have just some tape on this, but working on a button off to the side that allows you to use it like a Google Cardboard. And then also with the grip, you'll be able to use the Bluetooth grip for controlling it as well. And if you've read or seen some of my podcast, I'm also looking at creating a 6-axis controller that's Bluetooth controlled to allow you to utilize your hand within your VR experience. So what are the positives of this? First of all, it's very compact, fits any 6 or 5.5-inch phone and above, like the iPhone 6S Plus, or in my case, my Note 4, which I was using today with the new demo NEODiVR Graveyard, which is going to be pretty cool. Hopefully I will have it done and out this weekend. But what makes this kind of neat is that I use a 41mm lens. It's the same thing that's in the Oculus Rift 2, um, but it's at obviously at a 40 centimeter distance from the screen. What does that do? It provides about 110, 120 degrees of viewing, and with using Google Cardboard or a shader that I'm working on with the geez, can't think of it now. The iOS Scene Kit, you'll be able to view things and have all the proper distortion removed. So literally, it's like looking into what would you call it, a scuba mask, goggles, and seeing a world. And it's pretty impressive, or at least to me it is. And it'll be very low cost. I think this particular version here, without the flaps, will be about $45, $50. Don't hold me to that. My goal is, when I launch the Kickstarter, is to be able to use this as an incentive to fund what I'm hoping to do is provide this little product, the NEODiVR Junior, which is for children for hospitals. So this Christmas, those kids who can't leave the bed will be able to have something a little different to enjoy. And hopefully I will have some demos available to them, but I know there are a lot of other people working on it. And if, not that you're listening, but if Disney Pixar or Industrial Light Magic, um, FX, I guess their new VR lab would put out some stuff for Google Cardboard, I think that would be a really great idea. All right, well, it appears that I am talking to myself. I am going to end this. I really appreciate you listening in. I hope that you learned something about the capture process from Itsy's 3D scanner app, a little bit about the calibration. Thank you, Paul, for coming in and asking the questions. I know there are quite a few out there wondering, why does he get the quality that he does? I can't seem to do it. They get frustrated with it. It does take patience, but it does take a little bit of lighting. Oh well, can't think of what I wanted to say, so I'm going to leave that at that, and I'm going to call it a day. So thank you for listening, and this has been another special edition of All Things 3D, where Mike from Slow 3D Creators comes on and talks about his products, uh, again in detail on the whole scanning process. Okay, bye.